All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Ask Us Anything. Johnny Heller, Don Baarns, Julie Wilson. We're excited to have you here. And Julie's somebody that I didn't know a couple years ago. I mean, she's just this person that's out there and working with one of the biggest audiobook companies in the world. And like many people, I don't know everybody, so this is a joy to have her on. Johnny, can you tell us a little more about Julie?
Sure, Don, I will.
And don't do your announcer voice.
Julie is more than just a dear friend. She's a wonderful person. We live fairly close to each other. We see each other reasonably often, and we're friends more than anything, I guess. And so I've known her for a long time, and she's more than just a pretty face, though. Her title has been senior producer at Penguin Random House. But I want to talk about something new that just happened. It's a new title, a new it's a promotion, a step into the even bigger league. She's in the big leagues always. But so tell us about your new official gig.
Yeah, my title is always a mouthful, and I think that's partially because every 2.5 years, Penguin Random House looks at me and they're like, "We need to throw you at something new. Here's your new title." So my title has been the Director of Strategic Partnerships and Digital Production Platforms, and what that has meant is forming relationships and partnerships with outside companies, whether they're recording companies, research companies, language, music, and then of course creating and running Ahab. And now things have expanded to tack on another title as the Director of Casting. So in a nutshell, that means a lot, but I have a lot of ideas of where I want to go in the next year. But if you're thinking big picture of what that might mean, it's how we can expand our casting pool on a big picture level and thinking about what are the types of talent that we're missing and how we can continue to grow our community and relationships. And there's so much into it, but yeah, there's a lot to dig into in the next year.
So wait, so you're, in other words, do I hear that right? You're going to throw out all your narrators and you're going to 100% AI. Is that close?
Oh God, no. No, I mean,
oh, did I miss something?
I know. Surprise, we're investing more in casting, which is, I think, great. Most people, I think a lot of people in the industry know this, but my dad was an actor on Broadway when I was a little kid, and my sister was an actor in film and TV for a while before becoming a visual artist. So actors are my family, my community, and everything. So that's one of the reasons why I've grown into that position.
Let me ask some questions about what you're doing, about what you said to begin. When you reach out to other companies, other entities, is it to form a working relationship with Penguin Random House, or for Penguin Random House to kind of envelop them and make them part of the company as well, or just to work with them?
So far, it's been more partnering, not merging or acquiring them. It's just a hard nutshell to describe because there's so many different relationships we could form. For instance, I've met with a ton of research companies that can help us with language and pronunciations. And there are different ways of doing that. And so I've met with companies that have a ton of linguists from all over the world with all different backgrounds. So I've met with those people. I've met with music companies that represent musicians, but also have music databases. So you can extrapolate in so many different ways. A big thing that happened 2 years ago, I believe, is we decided for the first time to partner with third-party production companies. So we partnered with Curated Audio and Dion Audio to help us record certain actors. And it's a small portion of our list, but overseeing those relationships, and our list continues to grow. So we need more and more support, and we can't bear the weight of all of that in-house. So we need to partner with outside companies.
Cool. Okay, so when Penguin Random House hires me, which, as a side note, is not often enough, it's always with a director, and I generally always choose to go to the studio because it's not a long walk for me, you as you know, and I just grab Paul Rubin and off we go. It's more of a free lunch thing for me. Is it the Penguin Random House thing that you should always? Are all your projects have a director attached, or most?
I would say the vast majority. I'll throw out a number, though it's not going to be accurate. It's just my hunch. I would say that it's probably like 97% have directors, And there's 3% of sometimes actors prefer to work on their own schedule for various reasons. And so we've expanded that list a bit over the past year to allow actors to work in that way. I know a lot of actors are used to working in that way. But it's still a pretty small portion of our list. Directors are still really vital to our industry. And I always say, like, let everyone do what they do best. So let actors have on their creative hat and have an outside ear on all their work. I think that's really helpful.
Now that you're director of casting, we'll talk about Ahab in a second, but there are how many? There's every producer at Penguin Random House, and I don't know how many are there about.
We have about 20 producers. I think 19 to be exact, but it's right around
20
20.
works.
Yeah.
20 works for us.
Yeah.
Does each one have a quarterly list or yearly list, or like I'm Johnny Heller, the producer over at Penguin Random House? How many titles am I going to have in a given quarter or a given year, and are they genre specific? Because I like that sort of thing. How's that work out?
Yeah, most of the producers have around 100 titles per year. That's a little bit less for the producers that sit on Dan Zitt's direct team. So those producers are me, Kelly Gilday, Karen Jakonski, and Maddie. So we have slightly less because we just do all these other things for the industry. And we used to be on a quarterly system. It used to be seasonal, where we would have the editorial team would launch titles to us and we would pick off the titles we were most interested in. We've now switched to a monthly divvy of titles because there's just too many titles. And it was a easier way to do it. And the thing I love about my job is we are not pigeonholed into genres. And I know a lot of actors can relate to that. They're actors, they can mold into any number of genres, and we're similar. I love working on a kid's book one day and a political book the next day and a memoir the next day. And I think it keeps us really fresh in all of our skills.
How often? I'm going to jump to Ahab and we'll describe it in a second. But I guess my question is one of math.
Mm-hmm.
Let's say that, I know it's not exact, 20 producers or 100 books, that's 2,000 titles.
Yep.
But you go to Ahab and sometimes there's nothing there and sometimes there's 3 opportunities. So obviously not everything goes through Ahab.
So I know we've talked about this before, and it's
we're going to keep talking about it till I understand it.
We'll keep talking about it because I think it's partially how we built this site that has led to a little bit of confusion. And we've tried to add more copy on the site to explain what's going on. But we're actually getting less of this feedback these days. So I think people are getting it more. So when you land on that first page, once you sign in, usually what you're seeing are public auditions. And what we call public auditions are open to anyone in the platform. I would say the vast majority of auditions that happen these days are what we call private auditions. And it just means that the producer is selecting you off of your profile to audition. And one of the reasons for that is some people don't want to listen to 200 auditions before choosing their top candidates. I actually really love public auditions because it introduces me to new talent. And I think it gives people a foot in the door. But there are pros and cons to each approach. And with the private auditions, it's just a limited number of people, 10, 20, 30, however the producer wants. And you will see those private auditions on your main page if you're privately invited. But in general, when you log on, and I know, Johnny, you've logged on, you're like, these are all for someone who's not like me. Why am I getting these auditions?
13-year-old Sudanese girls, yeah.
Yes, it's because they're public auditions. So as an actor, you're meant to review the breakdown and think about, am I right for this, or should I wait for another audition to come up?
How do I, in the universal I, not just Johnny here, how do I get it? How do I get more opportunities for the private auditions? Or is that just dumb luck or what?
There's so much to do, right? And there's so much strategy in this industry. And I think I always say this, what's really interesting about our industry from an actor's perspective is that so much of this is self-led, and it's become, Johnny, I'm sure you've seen this, our industry has exploded over the past 10, 20 years. I've been in the industry for 17 years now, and it's just dramatically changed. So when I first started, we had a small pool of actors who were doing most of the titles, and now there's so many people who can get work. And And what that's led to is for a real need for networking and polishing your materials, whether it's your Ahab profile, your website, your where you appear on other casting platforms and databases. Sometimes that means forming social media, although I tell everyone if you hate social media, you don't have to be on it. You do have to have a website. You don't need to have social media. But it's really engaging in the industry. I mean, we have such a community oriented industry, and there are opportunities all the time, whether they're virtual or in person, to show up and meet producers. And while it's not just, hey, I met whoever, Karen Jakonski at this event, and now you get hired, that happens sometimes, not because of the relationship, but because, like, I'll use Karen as an example. She spoke to someone at an event recently who was a diehard tennis player, and so is Karen. And Karen happened to be producing a nonfiction title about tennis in that next week. This was a lottery moment. This does not happen generally, but that led to a one-to-one audition and then landing that job. That's what everyone's hoping for, but normally it's more of an organic growth and relationship building and producers learning about your skill sets, interests, passions, cultural background, etc.
Cool. Don, can we get, can you highlight, oh, you're doing it now. All right. So we'll grab some questions now. Jeffrey
Okay.
Machado. Can you see it?
This is a really cool question. I feel like I've never been asked this. Which audiobook narration skill is most overrated and which is most underrated? Huh.
I like how you read that, by the way, with such feel. Can you do that?
Yeah. You're no AI. That's true.
Yeah. I'm not an AI voice. That's really interesting.
Audiobook narration skill overrated. I don't know how you overrate a skill.
I understand what it's saying. It's so hard. I'm always challenged by these questions because I find I'm really lucky in the company I work for and in the way we produce, because we're so specific. Like, we're specific for every role. So it's always hard for me to make these blanket statements about everything, because something that might be overrated for you might be underrated for somebody else. And so I kind of feel like it's so actor specific.
So how does somebody piss you off in terms of, I mean, that would be, so I'm going and telling you, listen, I'm the greatest dog trainer in the world. And you're like, so what? I mean, what are the things that end up making, but I keep doing it. So what would have you say no to me? I mean, almost what's an automatic fail?
Okay, wait, I think I can answer the first question and then we'll go there.
Cool.
I think what is the most overrated? I think in actors' minds, social media is the most overrated thing, because everyone feels like they need to post on social media every day, every week. People hate it. I have never hired anyone off of social media. Never.
Okay.
I get reminded about people and who they are on social media because I personally enjoy social media. But, like, it's not for Penguin Random House. It's not like you post on social media and we're like, oh my God, we have to hire this person. A lot of people feel like it's more important in that way, but I do understand how social media is really important in the indie market and forming relationships with individual authors. So it's just like everything in the industry. There's so many different nuances here, but I would say, to be cast by Penguin Random House, social media is probably overrated, although it is still a good community builder and place for you to stay not relevant, but stay present in the industry.
And do you feel that this is the same thing applies to the other 19 producers? Like, your point of view is what most that you know of do?
I mean, I'll speak from what I think generally, but everything is, of course, colored by my own experience, right? And I would say that is true for the other producers. I'm probably the most active on social media out of all of the producers. Yeah. So I would say, if I'm saying it's the most overrated, it's probably the most overrated for all other 19 of them.
Yeah.
But that doesn't mean you shouldn't have something there. It's just like, it's not going to be that lottery moment of, I saw you on social media and you get a gig. And it also doesn't mean that it does add to your credibility in a certain way. If you do go viral and you have a giant social media account, you just get more opportunities in this industry, whether it's public speaking, APA panels, all of that. But also, that's a very unique person that really wants to be on social media and wants to be an audiobook narrator. So there's just nuance there. And I'd say what the most underrated skill by new narrators is, and maybe this is obvious, but perfecting your performance is the most important thing you can do. If you do nothing else and you just have amazing samples, like that is the number one thing you should do. It's all about you doing amazing work. Nothing else matters if you don't have a good performance.
Okay, now
I'm
I've
so
said this.
delighted to
Wait,
hear
Johnny,
you
I got to
hear
cut
you
you
say
off.
what I say. Huh?
I've said this 100 times. So my mom loves my voice. Is that good enough for? How do I now? So now I know I'm great because I've been told by my family plenty of times that it's great. So does that impress you? What do you mean having a good performance? What do I need to do to make an impression in terms of my performance with you?
I feel like when people say something along those lines, I have a similar reaction to what editors feel when someone tells them they have a book. It's like, have you written the book? Have you edited the book? Is the book ready to go? So I'm always like, I kind of like laugh and, we kind of move on. I do say that that's a starting point for people, right? And sometimes I think our industry is interesting in that we have a lot of trained actors who have acted on stages and film and TV and have done a million things. We also have a growing section of our industry of people who are not actors and don't come from acting backgrounds. And I know there's lots of mixed feelings about that, but that doesn't mean they can't become incredible narrators. I've seen a few and become really great narrators. And that's because they were dedicated and they perfected their performance. And probably they had some natural talent that wasn't just the quality of their voice, it was everything else that was behind the voice and all the emotion they were bringing to it. I feel like I went on a tangent from your other question. If you want to remind me what it was.
No, it's fine. First off, you can talk about anything you want because your point of view is the most important thing here. I just want to make sure that so let's say I'm actually working at it. What should I go out and do to improve my performance from your point of view? And what would impress you if I said, hey, I studied with this guy out here that did a commercial for cereal. Would that
Yeah.
impress you?
I don't know why. I just have something in me, and maybe it's because I was like raised in New York and like whatever. I was exposed to a lot of things. I feel like a lot of like the celebrityism of all of that doesn't impress me. Saying you did a demo with someone, it doesn't impress me because so many people do demos with really impressive people. Again, it goes back to the sound and what they've done. I think what really impresses me is if I hear that actors are thinking about things both creatively and strategically. That's how I think about my career. That's how I want actors. I think part of this for me is that like I said earlier, I grew up surrounded by actors and performing artists. And I think it's really challenging a lot of the time if you're an artist to also come at your art as a business. But this is a business. Every one of you is running your own business. So I think what really impresses me, as long as your performance is top notch, is that seeing that you're thinking about things like, these are my goals for this year. This is how I'm expanding my skill set. I really want to work with these people. And sometimes it doesn't matter if you achieve that in a year, but you're setting goals for yourself and really thinking about yourself as somebody who's going to be here in 5 years.
So how often should I contact you and tell you I've revised my goals? Like you like hearing from me once a week, once every 2 days. I'll bet once a day.
Johnny's heard this from me. I am not a fan of newsletters. I tell everyone, take me off your newsletters. I am a fan of personal relationships, and I respond to almost everyone who sends me a DM on Instagram. That's not an invitation to just do that all the time.
Get
But
ready.
but it's more
Tomorrow.
like I really like forming relationships with people and learning what drives them. I get excited about all of that, but you make all the producers anonymous by launching newsletters at them that they don't ask for. And I think it's actually illegal to put people on newsletters that they don't
Is it
actually
illegal?
subscribe. I think it is. I don't think you can just spam people without them saying, yes, I want to be part of this newsletter.
Oh, I need to get
Um,
hold of the entire Democratic Party.
The
I'm not
opt-in.
a lawyer. I can't say that for sure, but I think people actually have to subscribe.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah. In theory, we all have to subscribe, and you have to have a do not, unsubscribe me link in your stuff. And Yeah.
Yes,
So, but it's hard to
exactly.
enforce that kind of stuff. And yeah,
But we come across, I'm known, and I'm kind of sad that the APA is virtual this year. I love in-person APA
Crazy
because
idea.
I barely go to the talks because I've been in this industry forever. I know what's going on. There's not much I'm going to learn there, but I learn the most by I just stand in the hallway and I talk to people for 8 hours and I go from one to the next, to the next. That's literally how I do APAC. And that's when I want to hear what people are up to. I want to hear what you're excited about. Did you listen to a program of mine or one of my colleagues? And it's, again, that's how I run. I run via relationships, and I'll read a book 10 times and not remember it 10 years later, but I will remember conversations that happened 10 years later. So that's me and how I personally work.
This may be adding to the same kind of thing, but here's Laura's question up here.
Yeah.
Julie, tell us the best way to be considered by casting without being a nudge.
Yes.
What kind of correspondence and follow-up leads to the best? And I know it's different for each publisher, but what's in a general sense the best way that PRH likes it?
I'd say with all of this, it's looking for the opportunities in your own career. For instance, if you go to Directors Diagnostics or the New England Retreat with Johnny or the Dion Institute, and you interface with producers, that is your moment to follow up because the producer has put themselves out there to meet you and learn about you. And so, hopefully, in whether a stronger bond or a less strong bond, you have started to form a relationship with them. So, that's your moment to follow up later as just like a little reminder, concise email, reference something that you guys have talked about. And that, again, that leads to a genuine relationship instead of just saying, here, I hit my 100th title, which for us, it doesn't matter if it's 100 or 99 or 101. It just depends on if you're right for this book and how are your performance skills.
Here's one from, if you can see Imagination Video Books there, Don, that's Richard out in Denver. Richard Reedman, I don't know if you know him. He has put together books for the visually and hearing impaired. And we did a wonderful Winnie the Pooh, as a matter of fact.
Cool.
He's really just charming, and he's doing some wonderful things. So I not only want to bring him up just because I think what he's doing is fantastic, but now he wants to know if PRH is going to make illustrated books. I think he's just trying to find a way to get his name mentioned here.
It's interesting. It's actually, I've been talking to people about books that are accessible in this way for over a decade. My dad's best friend, Joel, and now I'm forgetting his last name, but a lot of people in that audio description world know Joel. He lives in DC. He's been in that industry for a long time and in audiobooks for the blind. We've been in conversations for years about, is there a place in this industry for this? So far, and I'm not the decision maker on all the things that happen at Penguin Random House Audio, but there hasn't been a place yet. But we do a lot of audiobook adaptations. I think what's hard with books, I'm guessing Winnie the Pooh is in the public domain. I'm not sure, but
Yeah.
books like that are in the public domain, what's hard is, again, you have to remember publishing is a business. And is there a place and a market for another public domain book to come out there? So there is, I forget what the number is, again, from all these conversations, there are tons of people that want to experience these books. And they need the audio description to see the visualizations or understand the visualizations. There hasn't been a market made for it yet, is what I'll say. But I know there is a big need out there. And there are also good companies that are doing stuff like that. But we just haven't dove into it yet.
Let me add something there for everybody. You've heard me say this, and I want to say it because Julie's here, and it's something that I feel about Julie that I think is important to point out. One of the things I really love about our industry, the audiobook industry, the craft of creating audiobooks, is we bring literature and share the gift of literature and storytelling with the masses. And people really begin to love books because of what we bring. And Julie believes that to her soul. And I think it's important to know things like that. Hold on, my dog wants out. Hold on.
I walked my dog right before this because I was like, there's going to be no barking here.
Yeah, well, mine will bark. But anyway, the whole point is there's something, I don't know another way to say it, except I think this is a very honorable profession. And I know that Julie feels much the same about it. And that's why we are simpatico on so many things. So the idea of making books accessible for anyone who's impaired in any way is important to all of us.
Yeah.
And I think while Julie would definitely be involved in any kind of project that would benefit those, again, she's not Mrs. Penguin Random House. She's Julie, and she does what she's allowed to do, but her
It's
heart's absolutely in the right place.
Yeah, always. I mean, I was an English major, creative writing minor. I'm a writer in my own free time, and stories, I mean, I always say the stories are at the heart of my life in
I
like this
can't fathom
crazy
you with
way.
free time. Yeah.
Yeah, my mom's a psychologist, and I mean, I feel like between that and my actor dad, just stories are like the heart of our family. And this industry, and I feel like a lot of people feel this way when they make it into audiobooks. You're kind of like, I don't know how I ended up here, but this is so perfect for me and like in what I value and what I want to do in my life. And going back to audio description for a minute, it's interesting because there is a growing number of graphic novel adaptations and other books that are highly illustrated that are becoming audiobooks. So that tells me most likely in 5 years, who knows, 10 years, like this is going to be a growing market unless something dramatically changes. And who knows what that's going to be? Maybe we'll all be having virtual reality headsets on and have these headsets on and it'll be something completely different. But I don't know. It's just
Yeah.
interesting.
I'm going to talk to you about Ahab again in a second, but first let's take
Yeah,
Chris's question.
sure.
What audiobook genre do you see as having the greatest growth potential in 2024?
Yeah, I don't know. I know that there is more interest in growing middle grade literature and seeing, I think um, selling kids' books on audio has always been a challenge. There isn't a marketplace that I know about that's like a kid friendly app for kids to just like pick from their queue for their kids' audiobooks. So I think there are just some logistical challenges in the industry to really get those books into kids' hands because they all have to go through the parents' account into the kids, et cetera. There are some devices that kids can get, but yeah, it's a little bit more challenging. I know that nonfiction is always growing. I haven't looked at the latest APA study. I know an APA study came out recently that was
Yeah, I didn't
talking
see it
about
either.
the split. I glanced over it, but I don't remember.
But I think that what's the number one genre? Is it mystery and thriller? Is that number one still? Or
I
are
don't
we
know.
lit RPG, romance? I mean, those are the big ones in terms of where the money is, and that's where the books come out.
Yeah, and I think it's also a lot of actors ask this question to know like how to pivot their careers. And I guess it depends on what you're looking for in a certain way. Because again, companies like Penguin Random House are not like, all right, pitch yourself as the nonfiction guy because we're doing like 800 nonfiction books. Like we're really diversified in the genres we're doing. But if you look at self-published books, independent authors, you're going to find a lot of books that are probably more in the romance genre, mystery, thriller, fiction, nonfiction genres. So it kind of depends on what your goals are. And I usually dissuade people from going genre first and thinking more about what do you bring to these recordings and then how to pivot yourself into those.
Can we stay on that for 1 second? Because
Yeah,
I find it fascinating. Because
yeah.
Julie will talk about this. She's also a coach. We'll talk about that in a sec. We got Ahab and coaching coming up. But based on what you just said, I think there is a rush to be genre specific from a lot of the narrators, particularly newer ones. Kind of like, and I wonder if in the old days when the doctors were general practitioners, GPs, they don't have them anymore. Now every like in commercials, talk to your endocrinologist. Like who the fuck has an endocrinologist? But
I
let's say
do. But
shut up. Shut up. I'm trying to make
I
a
have
point.
all my specialty
Screwing
doctors.
up my points. But anyway, so I think there is a problem when you say, because I've worked with a lot of actor students who say, I just want to do sci-fi. And I'm like, well, all right, but just think of all the genres you're shutting down, all the opportunities that aren't there for you. And I agree with you. And maybe you can give the casting person take on this, but maybe you've already said it. Actually, it's the performance, the ability to tell the story in almost any genre is far more important than the genre in and of itself. Yes.
Yeah, I think what's interesting is you think about certain genres like mystery, thriller, and romance slash erotica. There's like an intensity to those genres that you have to sustain and while finding nuance, of course, throughout the performance. But there are certain people that just really like the intensity of certain types of books and they want to live in that world. I also think about actors, it's just like anytime you're starting something new, you're like, I really want this and I want to master this. And I just say to anyone who's very pigeonholed or tunnel visioned on that, that's where you are for now. But you will likely grow your roster because most performers, most actors, most audiobook narrators, like you said, have so many more nuances. They're dynamic people and performances. They don't have to be so tunnel visioned. But some people just get excited about certain types of books. I will say the other thing that's challenging both as I guess a person in this industry and as a coach is some people get really excited about certain genres or characters that they're not the best well suited for. I see that the most with middle grade and young adult books. I'm going to create a course about middle grade and young adult narration because I think it's one of the most popular. Don, is there
Yeah,
something you
yeah,
want to
yeah,
talk
yeah.
about?
So
Yeah.
what's middle grade? I mean, I've
Oh,
been accused
middle
of being
grade.
middle grade about too many things.
Yes.
Please define that for us.
All right, so we got picture books that are for the young kids, and
Okay.
then we have middle grade, which is more preteen,
Okay.
like age, middle school, elementary school age. It's usually a lot more adventure stories, coming of age, who am I? I'm making friends, I'm learning emotions. And then you have young adult, which is more angsty, a little bit of sexiness, high school age, going
Okay.
into college. Yeah.
I thought it was a
And-
judgment call on my acting ability.
Yeah.
He's a middle grade actor. He just barely makes it out of beginner school. So,
Yeah, it's interesting that you define. I agree totally with your descriptions of them. The idea that you're going to form a course is a good idea because I do all those. That's why I started my career. And there is a real definitive difference between the style that it's not just the style the narrator uses, it's what the author calls for
Yeah.
in each of those books. And I think the actor who's quickest to understand where they need to be emotionally and what the script calls for is the one who does those kind of books best.
Mhm.
And if that you can do a picture book or a middle grade book doesn't necessarily mean you can do the teenage angst book.
Yeah.
They don't necessarily work, but maybe they
It's
do. Hopefully they
it's
do.
really interesting because I love kids books. Like I know at times I've been known as the kids book person, though there are only a small portion of my list. I just love producing middle grade and young adult. But you're right. Some people are really great at young adult. Some people are great at middle grade, but not vice versa. There's also nuances in the point of view. Some people that have more mature sounding voices can do these books told in the third person. But if you stick them in a first person point of view, they don't sound like a kid or a young adult. So again, I feel like this is the luxury of working for Penguin Random House. We are considering all of these things when we're casting anything. We're really, really thoughtful about every book.
do you
Let's
kind of
talk.
mentally pigeonhole? I mean, do you want me to come to you and say these are my one or two specialties and this is where I'm best? Or are you trying to tease that out of us? How do I tell you I'm good at middle grade? And then the question is, how do I get good at middle grade? But first,
Yeah.
should I be pitching myself to begin with if I'm not working with you as here's where I want to go, and here's my samples to back it up, as opposed to just showing you, hey, here's 20 samples, I can do whatever.
I think what you said there is key. If you say you can do something, you need to show it. And with samples, I'll just clarify this because some people know this, some people don't. If you say you can do a skill, you need to have a sample for it, whether it's on Ahab, your website, or another casting platform. Because if you say it, I don't really know if it's true or not. I can only know if I listen to it. And what I say with everyone, this is how I guide clients is yes, think about the work you want to do. Think about the roles you want to play. Think about the genres you want to perform. But you also need everything else. And that's not like everything else, but I'd say when you're getting started, you start with your top 3 samples, like nonfiction, fiction, a genre. Say that unless you're really heavy in kids. And then you expand that to 5 samples, then you expand it to 10 samples. And honestly, I would be happy if everyone on Ahab had 20 samples. And that doesn't mean go into your booth and record just like 20 samples. It's really thinking about what you are demonstrating with each of these samples and doing it concisely. And that's where I think a lot of people get tripped up early in their career. They're like, oh, they say they want a lot of samples. Okay, so I took a week and I recorded 20 samples. You're probably not doing that thoughtfully if you're doing that all in one period of time. It's also your skills and interests are going to evolve over time. So, and probably actors hate this a little bit, but it's true. Your samples, just like your website or social media or anything else, this is a living, breathing thing. You don't just do this and 5 years passes and you're still good. I would say every year to 2 years, you want to really start assessing, do these still represent me? Because if you're doing what we talked about earlier, wearing that strategic and that creative hat, you should be growing in your skills. So every year you should be adding or taking away samples that no longer represent who you are.
I absolutely agree. You've got to keep your samples. They have to demonstrate where you are right now. And I just made some new samples just recently, and I'm working on some new ones again because what I had wasn't demonstrate what I sounded like anymore or what I did. So
Yeah.
things are changing. Let's go. I know Don wants to say, but I want to get her to make sure we talk about Ahab.
Yeah, sure.
Tell us a little bit about Ahab, a general description, and how the folks out there in YouTube and Facebook land can get into it.
Yep. So Ahab Talent, ahabtalent.com is a global casting platform for voiceover. It's primarily grounded in audiobook narration, created by Dan Zitt and me at Penguin Random House. It is under the Penguin Random House umbrella, but a ton of other companies in the industry and beyond use it to cast actors. So there's also people casting podcasts on there and animation and video games, et cetera, et cetera. But it is primarily focused on audiobook narration. And so when you create an account, you're going to want to at least have 2 samples. You need 2 samples in order to become visible to content creators, to producers. And there's so much other information you can provide there, your bio, your general knowledge, any accent language skills. You can think of it kind of like LinkedIn meets Facebook for audiobook narration and voiceover. And it's the primary online tool Penguin Random House producers are using to cast. It is so much better than it was when I first started producing 17 years ago, when I had a Google Doc and I would have a list of people for middle grade and a list of people who were British and a list of people. And it was like, we missed so much nuance in those days. And we're at this really cool place in the casting process where we can get very specific about who this author is, who these characters are, and finding someone that is a really, really good match for the role.
So I could summarize that, though, that's your go-to starting point if you don't already have somebody in mind, correct?
Yes, that is our go-to starting point. Yep.
And then, so it's open to anybody. I can be there tomorrow if I'm dumb enough to do that.
Yes, we made it so that there's no barrier to entry for actors other than you need 2 samples. There is a barrier to entry for content creators. And I would say if any content creators are out there and they want to get on the platform, they just have to apply. And Dan Zitt and I personally review every single application. And that's so that when we let in people to the platform who are not from Penguin Random House, they're just vetted. We want the content on the platform to be really high quality. And we want to make sure these are, yes, working producers, casting directors out in the world, so that there isn't any junk on there that you have to weed through.
Okay.
How do you like these samples, the demos labeled in the audiobook area?
This is always an interesting question. So I'll speak from my personal opinion, and I know a lot of producers like this, and then there are other people that like want something a little bit different. And I think the truth is it depends on what the producer's role is in the industry. So for instance, we have 19 producers, 20 producers, whatever we're at these days. We also have support staff that use Ahab. So we have our casting team that I oversee now, who is going in there and helping producers cast. And they've said in the past they like people's names on labeled. I think that's a big waste of space, but they like it because sometimes they have to download the sample and they don't want to retype people's names. I think it's a more worthy use of space to include the genre or subgenre. Subgenre is really important. So if it's like, I don't even know, let's name something.
History.
I don't even know. Yeah, history. And then it's like, I don't even know. You might say like Vietnam or something just like a little bit more specific.
History's kind of broad. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, like history is like what European. You could say, okay, it's history labeled as history.
English
when you
lit.
upload your sample, and then we go European lit, the Renaissance. So, there's so many more specifics in there because the more precise you are, the better I can be at matching that sample to the book on my desk, because I'm not just going in there looking for history samples. Our casting department might go in there and be like, oh, we don't have enough actors who are good at history. Probably not that example, but like other examples like that. So it's a genre, subgenre, a short description of what the producer's about to listen to. And I mean like max 5 words, most likely. And this is to give me a sense, again, of the greater nuance of this sample. We're being super specific in our casting. And finally, any accents or anything else that you want. Is this an award winner that you actually voiced that was published? But those are the elements I think of. And that's so that when I arrive on your Ahab profile or website or wherever else these samples appear, I can look through at a glance and say, oh, I need that sample, or I need this sample, because you don't want me to get lost in the weeds of your 20 samples, not knowing what I should listen to, because that leads me to be more apt to miss it. You want to be really specific about what you're offering.
So if you are listening to my sample, are you going to listen to me for a half hour, 45 minutes, an hour and a half? What's kind of, I'm new to you. I've just submitted. You're listening to my first sample. What's on average it going to be?
I'd say you want it to be anywhere between 1.5 and 2.5 minutes. I think you don't need to be longer than that. There's so many reasons why I say that. 1, I don't want you to do more work than you need to. 2, you should be thoughtfully enough considering these samples that you are trying to showcase something in that moment. You don't need 5 minutes. You don't need 10 minutes. I will anticipate that you can do a whole book showcasing what you do in those 1.5 to 2.5 minutes. Just be aware of that. But that is way enough for me to know, as long as you're being really targeted about what you're showcasing.
I have a question and a word of advice that you and I have discussed. So I know you agree with me on this.
Yeah.
When you out there do your samples, do your demos, if you're saying your highlights male, female, female, so there's 2 females in it, male, female, female, dialogue, French accent, whatever. Don't have a minute of first person point of view or narrative stuff before you get to the dialogue and the accent. What you want to show is the dialogue that you can do male, female, female, and the French accent. That has to come right away. Julie and her and all publishers don't have time to wade through the minute to see when you finally say ooh la la. It's just we don't have, so you've got to get that first, right?
It's also, if that's what you're showcasing in that sample, if that's what you're putting in the title, that's telling me this is the most important thing that I'm showcasing for you, then no, the narrative voice likely matters a little bit less there, because you're saying I can do these accents.
And how often should people update, not only, we've already mentioned their samples, but their Ahab profile? And let's say they have a new pseudonym or something. How often, when it's all, and do they let anyone else know, or do people know immediately?
Yeah, I would update it as soon as you have something new to share. It's good to keep it up to date. Generally, we say that, so when I do a search on Ahab, and the first page or 2 or 3 or 4, depending on the search, there's usually a bunch of updated profiles. But the lower I get down, the more I know these people haven't updated their profiles, because our search is done by most recently updated. It's a secret that's not so much a secret anymore because I've shared it a ton. But this means that when you update your profile, you go to the top of the list. Now, this doesn't mean you should just, finagle it all the time. You can do whatever you want. I'm not in charge here. But keep your stuff updated. And that's so that you're best representing yourself. And pseudonyms. Did you want to talk about pseudonyms?
Yeah. Let's talk about that. Talk about that a little bit.
Yeah. Okay. Pseudonyms are awesome. I think they're a really strategic tool that you can use. For Ahab, there's 2 ways of doing it. You can either have one profile and you mention your pseudonym in your bio or general knowledge, and you include both samples from you as yourself and you as your pseudonym. You can also have 2 separate Ahab pages, one for your pseudonym, one for you as you being you. That's completely up to you. I think the truth is about pseudonyms, you're not trying to keep your identity secret from producers. You're trying to keep your identity secret from publicists, marketers, authors, and sometimes the general public. And that's because you generally form a pseudonym when you're voicing conflicting genres. So kids and erotica, or maybe different types of political nonfiction or fiction. So it's a bigger conversation, but the most important thing is if you have a pseudonym, make sure your contact info is readily available on a website somewhere, because there have been so many times we don't know who the real person is, and it turns out it's someone we work with all the time. So yeah, make sure it's out there.
Don, can you bring up Keith Brown's question, and then we'll talk to Julie about coaching stuff?
Sure.
You occasionally see English language projects that have phrases, passages in a foreign language or two. Sure.
Mm-hmm.
Along with this, what is the term audiobook fluent communicate to you?
It's a good question. Yeah, we definitely see English language projects that have phrases or passages in a foreign language. In general, when we're casting for those, we're looking for people that can accurately portray those words, passages, phrases in that language. Audiobook fluent, again, every producer probably has a slightly different view of this. I would say that you're able to voice a character's dialogue in that language or accent. It's rare that I'm going to cast someone not, how do I say this? I'm not going to cast an American these days to play a Brit for an entire book in the narrative voice in the characters. It's going to be once in a blue moon that I do that these days, because we have tons of amazing British narrators. We don't need Americans doing the British narrator. And that's the other one, other than kids, that Americans get the most disheartened by, because we are obsessed with Brits in America. And I've had clients and actors in the past be like, but I love doing British narrative voices. And I'm like, you're just not probably going to be cast for this, which is unfortunate.
I want to talk about that later privately. Let's talk. So let's say I want to study with, you mentioned you develop this course for middle grade and young, work on that.
Yes.
I want to study with you. Where do I find information? Where do you post things? How do I know Julie's House of Coaching? How does that set up?
So you can go to thearticulatecoach.com and subscribe to the newsletter there. You can also go to The Articulate Coach on Instagram. That's where I post the most. And I'm really developing the newsletter right now in a fun way. I was thinking about like, I don't want to send newsletters just to kind of spam people. I delete every newsletter, as we talked about. Like, I have a mixed relationship with newsletters. I want to actually offer people content that's helpful. So I'm pivoting the newsletter right now to be more interactive with people that subscribe to it. So sometimes that will mean asking questions, and then I'll use the answers to those questions to share with the Articulate Coach community, or I'll post them on social media.
It's thearticulatecoach.com.
Yes, that's right. Thearticulatecoach.com.
So people want to study with you, that is where they go.
Yeah. Yes.
And how long have you been, now that we talked about this, I can't remember. It's been more than a year, I think.
Yeah.
How long have you been doing this?
So I've been coaching for over a year and a half in this capacity, but I've done conferences, workshops, other sorts of coaching for over a decade, forever. Yeah. So it's one of the reasons why I really formed this coaching business is because the higher up you get in your career corporately, the more you're kind of moving things like tectonic plates. You're just like shifting things big picture. And I got into this industry, as we talked about, because I love storytelling. I love actors. I love performances. I try to go to as many performances in the city as I can. And this has created this beautiful opportunity for me to help people one-on-one or in small groups. And I find it incredibly fulfilling. It's this great blend of my mom's background as having still a thriving practice of clients as a psychologist in New York City, and my dad's background of performing and creating characters and supporting the arts. So it just feels really natural. And I just love hearing about people's victories and helping them through the moments, because every single actor I know feels like they're shit at one moment or another. And every single actor thinks they should quit at one moment or another. And I think this comes from my mom in a lot of ways, of just continuing to move forward in your creative pursuits, because I feel like creatives are the ones that are first taken out in this world, and they have to be the most vulnerable and everything. So I don't know. I like being people's support system in that way.
So,
And you're doing one-on-one and group coaching, right?
Yeah, so I'm doing one-on-one coaching and group courses. What I quickly realized from doing group coaching or doing one-on-one coaching is my wait list is really, really long right now. So if you're interested, I highly recommend getting on the wait list now because it's multi months to get off of that at this point. So looking at that, I was like, all right, I can't see all these people every week. I just don't have the time bandwidth. So I pivoted it into courses. And when thinking about launching courses, it's just like everything else in my career. I wanted to be really thoughtful about it. And I didn't want to just launch something that people can take and it doesn't have my personal touch point. So you get a lot of hands-on attention, in my opinion, in the courses. We have live office hours every week. People receive feedback, individual feedback from me every single week. So I really wanted to make sure that they got me and it wasn't just something that lived on the internet that people watched in their own time. I think having that personal one-on-one attention is helpful. And also, it's interesting. It's a different dynamic between the group and one-on-one because coming out of these courses and the courses I create are really targeted towards different sections of your career. You come out with these group of people that you've gone through this thing together and you're bonded by. And so not only do you learn from me, but you start to learn from other people and what they go through. And it's like, it becomes metaphors of like, oh, that's kind of like what I'm going through. So
You develop a community. Yeah.
yeah, it's really nice.
so can I ask? So this is kind of a little self-serving here. What are your thoughts on coaching? Should all actors, I mean, or people in this business, let's say they don't coach with you, should they be coaching with somebody else? Should they just go, hey, I'm going to do it all on my own. I'm going to watch YouTube videos all day long. What's
I
your
think
take on coaches and the value of them toward their career?
I think it's just like everything else. It depends on the person and depends on their comfort level. And there's a million different things when it comes to that. One, I think that all the reputable coaches in our industry have something unique to offer. If you coach with me or you coach with Johnny, you're going to get something different. And so you're going to learn different things from each of us. So I think there's value in coaching with different people. People have different financial bandwidth. So no, I won't say everyone should go out and get coaching. And I won't also tell you that you need coaching to get hired because that's not true at all. I do think that people benefit by having someone in their corner and you're investing in yourself and in your career and with having someone who can help guide you. And with whoever you choose with coaching, that's investing in your future and your career. So no, it's absolutely not something you need. But I think people find that they get this boost from it because they then have someone that they're accountable for. They have someone that they're investing and they're putting in their own hard-earned money to learn something so that they become really dedicated to achieving the goals that they're like, I'll do it next month. I'll update my samples next month. I'll look at my branding or my social media in 3 months. And so I think it becomes a bit of an accelerator towards your own goals. But people have excelled in this industry without coaches. They've excelled with coaches. So it's more doing that soul searching. And what I tell people, whether it's with me or anyone else in this industry, don't feel like you have to do it right now. You can save up over the next year and be like, this is going to be my present to myself in 2025 because I've recorded this many books and now I want to invest in myself. And I think, I'm not like an accountant or anything, but if you're making money in this industry, this becomes then something that could potentially be tax deductible and other things. So again, it all depends on where you're at in your career financially. I'm always going to be the coach that's looking out for your health insurance and all of this boring stuff that people want to be like, yes, abundance, you will work all this. I'm like, I need you to have health insurance because I need you to be alive to get to that gig the following year. So I'm a good blend of really supportive, but also I have a very practical side of me as well.
And so your coaching though comes out of you doing a bunch of privates first, and then you put together the courses. Is that close?
Yeah. So I did a bunch of private coaching and then just needed to see to more people than I could fit in my calendar. And so now I have 2 courses this January. One is a really entry-level course. So it's for people just breaking in, and it's to help them break into this industry. the other course I'm offering right now, it's called Your Voice, Your Brand. And it's one of my favorite things in my career. It's really looking at who you are, what your skill sets are, and how to form that into a brand. So the heart of that is really authenticity and approaching this industry from a place of these are my passions, this is my background, these are my skills. And how can you bring in the branding that people get a little bit like, ugh, branding, like promoting myself. I hate that. And really making it authentic. And then in the spring, I'm planning to do one, like I said, in middle grade and young adult literature, kids lit. And then another one that's more the big B branding, like websites and social media and all the other stuff that actors hate. But I think what's fun about it too is because I like a lot of the things that actors hate. So they're like, oh, I have to do a bio. And I'm like, let's do a bio. And I really enjoy bios are very funny because every actor hates doing a bio. But what I like about doing bios with actors is by the end of it, I feel good when you feel like you are totally represented in this paragraph we've written together. And it's really, people go from hating bios to sharing their bios with their significant others, friends, and family because those people who love them light up because they're like, oh, that is you in this paragraph. So that's just an example. But yeah, it's interesting.
And how does that interface with Ahab with the bio and my description there? Do you pay? It sounds to me like you actually pay attention to what I write in my profile there.
Yeah, this all goes back to this idea that we're in this moment in this industry where authenticity really, really matters. And that means a billion different things, but it's about showcasing the very personal, not very personal, but like very unique assets of yourself, whether that's skills, background, passions, interests, whatever. Producers, especially at the PRH level, are trying to match you up with content that's really aligned with who you are and the expertise that you know about. And I think across the board, I can't speak for everyone, but if I look generally, it's going to make my job as a producer so much easier if I'm casting an actor who has expertise in the content that I'm producing, because I don't know everything and I don't know everything about everything I produce. But if I can find someone who's knows about astrophysics, because I sure as hell don't, then that will help me produce a better book.
Are all your workshops, some of your coaching, it's all virtual right now, yes?
Yes, it's all virtual. Yeah, at some point I was doing in-person meetups last year, mostly because like I was lonely and I needed to get more of the industry together. And I feel like the industry has been more revived with in-person events. So I don't feel like I need to do those anymore. But yes, it's all virtual. And the great thing about that, it's just like the great thing about this industry is I can work with people all over the world or all over.
Remind me later, because you and I are gonna set an in-person thing up.
Wait, are you talking to me?
Yep.
Oh yeah. Sorry, I didn't know if you were talking to Don. Yeah.
No, not Don Baarns. I need Don. But Don, you can come and set up the microphones.
Yes, I'm good at that.
I'd love to do in-person thing. I love people. I'm like an extrovert in an industry of introverts and publishing. So
you are.
I am. It's Dan and me being like, we could talk to people for hours. And everyone's like, I'm going to my cubicle. So yeah, I love the in-person events. It's just, as Johnny, there's a lot more that goes into planning those and making sure everything goes smoothly. It's much easier to teach and get it done with people one-on-one on virtually.
Oh my God. Yeah. All the things you got to do to have a big event. Speaking of which, because we're nearing the end of our hour, I want to say a couple of things, some commercial announcements. So Julie, you can get to the articulatecoach.com.
And then put it in the comments.
AhabTalent.com is where you go to sign up for Ahab. A couple things coming up. The Audies will be in LA this year. And Scott Brick and I will be having our I think I'll take top billing here. The Johnny Heller Scott Brick business of audiobook workshop on Sunday. What is that? The 3rd?
Something like that.
I think it's Sunday, the day before the Audies. What happens is that afternoon or evening, and I don't know why, but at 5:00, for some reason, the APA starts their cocktail party. So we will end our thing about 4:30 so we can all and try and have it close enough that we can wander over and stagger back out. And then the next day, of course, it will be the Audies, which who knows who will be there. But that's all in LA. That's coming up. Let's see. Julie's. I'm going to talk to
What
Julie
are the
about some stuff.
dates?
The
What
New
are the
England
dates?
workshop.
Well, I'm
What's
sorry,
that?
what dates are the Audis? What date?
I think the Audis are
Roughly?
Monday, March 4th.
March. Okay.
And
So
Yeah.
so if that's the right day, that number, then the business workshop is Sunday, March 3rd.
I'm
Yep.
just gonna
And
say
That's
early
what I'm
March.
seeing. Yep.
And Julie will be there
Yeah.
Cool,
because
cool,
we have a
cool.
publishers roundtable, and there'll be stuff. So it'll be a full day of learning things. And it's not about performance. It's about the business of audiobooks, the business part, because like it or not, this is a business. When Julie mentioned some of the stuff is tax write-offs, and a lot of it is, that's part of the business. And guys need to know that.
It's a great, I've done it years ago with Johnny in LA, and people came out of it saying this was one of the best things I've done because again,
Didn't you do it in New York too?
Oh, I did do it. I
You
did
did,
both.
yeah.
I always think of that first one we did in LA because I think it was, I don't know. It was my first time doing it with you all. But yeah, we did both of them. But because you all focus so much on the creative so much, again, it's one of those nice times to focus on the business side and ask all of your questions of a million different people and hopefully help you retain more money for yourself versus, all giving it away.
Yeah, and I have to do my commercial announcement here. My son and I, Donnie, are doing punch and roll in a day over the Christmas holiday. For those people who have been thinking about getting their punch and roll working really, really well so that you're doing your audio production and sending it into these majors and have it all tweaked out. So watch our VO site. That'll go up later today with the announcement that enrollment is open for, punch and roll in a day over Christmas, between Christmas and New Year's. We want to give people a chance to get ready for this next year, so you hit the ground running. Be sure you're going to, go ahead.
I'm just excited. I'm going to send people to you because I think this is the cool thing about this industry is everyone has different skill sets. And this is something that I am not skilled in as a producer. So I will get your info later with all of that because I like outsourcing what I don't know about to people that are really experts in these areas. So that's awesome.
Julie, you want people to reach out to you? Not necessarily want, but they can via Instagram. Is that what you said?
It depends on what you're reaching out to me about, right? And that's kind of the thing. And I think in a certain way you can think about branding here, but also think how you're interacting with me. If you have any questions about coaching or courses or anything related to that, you can reach out to me. It's julie@thearticulatecoach.com. That's my email. Feel free to email me there. You can reach out to me via Instagram too, either at my normal Juliana and Wilson or at The Articulate Coach on Instagram. I'll respond to you on either place. If there's anything related to Penguin Random House work, you can reach out to me at Penguin Random House. I'm not going to throw up my work email though here.
You want them all you want all 1,000 people to send you a message tomorrow? Is that what I'm hearing?
Oh boy, I won't be checking my email. I'm on holiday right now, so I won't see it. Okay. At least for my PRH email, I'll see the Articulate Coach emails.
By the way, this is something that comes up all the time when we're doing this sort of thing. For everyone out in the audience, you see somebody prominent like Julie, and then, she's going to get 100 emails over the next 3 days. If you're strategic about it, and this is one thing that they actually evaluate, and if you talk to Johnny, you really should take a lesson from Johnny because he understands this bigger picture, which is, okay, I've heard of her today. I might be better off waiting until like this. I want to do it now. Okay, I'm a little puppy dog. I want to do it. But what I probably should do strategically is wait until about the second week of January and say, by the way, I saw you on this. And if you saw her at the Heller conference or you saw her when she was working together, you remind her, hey, we met at this event. This is the thing that stood out to me. Add something a little personal about it, but don't think that today, because you saw her today, is the right day to send her a message probably.
Oh, you'll get lost in the crowd.
Right? But if everyone waited 2 weeks, 2 weeks would be a really terrible time to send it.
Okay.
So,
be very strategic and wait a year.
Yeah. But to add one more piece of strategy to that is you can pre-schedule a send, right? If you're so psyched, this is the way I operate. I get excited, so I do something. But so you can get excited and write me that email, and then you can pre-schedule that to send. It differs depending on your email platform, but send it in 5 days, 3 days, 2 days, whatever, a week, whatever feels right to you. I do see the question from Andrea, so I wanted to answer that with how large are the classes. I try to keep them really small. 10 people and under per class. Sometimes it's less, sometimes it's right at 10. It depends on who's enrolled so I can't guarantee, but my goal is 10 and under because I want people to feel like they have personalized attention and it's not a sea of actors with me.
Well,
Cool.
we want to thank Julie for joining us today, and thanks all of you for watching.
And
Don and I'll be here next week by our own sums because it's after Christmas, so we don't want
the
to bother
day, yeah,
anybody.
yeah, yeah, the
So
day
we'll
after
talk about
Christmas.
yeah,
Go
we'll
ahead,
talk about
Johnny.
but Merry Christmas to everybody, or whatever holiday you celebrate. I have no problem saying Merry Christmas. If you're offended by it, then yeah, work on yourself. That's how I feel about it. But thanks so much, Julie, for joining us. And I'll maybe since are you around for the next week or two at the old, because we can
Yeah,
let's grab
I'm
coffee or
here.
a cocktail.
I'm hanging out in New York. My family's local. I'm local. So I'll
All
be
right.
here.
I'll ring you up later.
Okay. Sounds
Yep.
great.
All right. Thank you for being here,
Uh,
Julie and Johnny, of course. And of course, next week, we're going to do a recap of all the cool things that happened, whatever we can think of for this year, but also what we're looking forward to for next year. So bring your questions, the things you want us to discuss, and people you want us to interact with over this next year. So we're super happy you've been with us today. And as always, we look forward to seeing you on the wires. You have a great weekend. Have a great holiday. See you. Bye.
Bye, y'all.